The Allen Lund Company thanks all the hard-working drivers who are moving goods across the country. We can't do it without you.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
The term advisory committee doesn't likely sound very exciting, but the topics they tackle and the effect they can have on future regulation are something of great interest. Meetings today are tackling topics such as speed limiters, automatic emergency braking, autonomous trucks, and lease purchase plans, among others. I'll talk with OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. A wide variety of ages and experiences make up the OOIDA board. We recently spoke with two younger board members about the importance of being politically active in the trucking industry. And finally, a renewed effort at the Missouri Statehouse would tackle the issue of predatory nonconsensual towing in the state. Meanwhile, competing bills in Indiana would either eliminate or increase the speed differential between cars and trucks. Scott Thompson gets the details from our state legislative expert, Keith Goebel. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. A member of Congress with a background in the trucking industry is calling out a bill that would increase a motor carrier's minimum liability insurance by 566%. In December, Representative Chuy Garcia introduced the Fair Compensation for Truck Crash Victims Act, which would bump existing minimum insurance levels from $750,000 all the way up to $5 million. Representative Mike Collins of Georgia pushed back during a hearing within the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee on Wednesday.
But y'all, we need tort reform in this country. Tort reform will solve the workforce issues, the parking issues. It'll solve the workers' comp issues, the health insurance issues. It'll solve all of our issue problems. Auto liability. They've done study after study after study, and it has been proven that between 75% to 91% of the time when a four-wheeler is involved in an accident with an 18-wheeler, it's the four-wheeler's fault, not the 18-wheelers. We don't need to force larger minimums on our auto liabilities in this country for trucking. The only thing that does, Mr. Chairman, is gives a pay raise to these trial lawyers out there. And with that, I yield back.
Representative Collins, who says he got his CDL at the age of 18, said he worries the up-and-coming generation of truck drivers won't have the opportunities to start a trucking company like he did because of measures like the minimum insurance bill, among others.
And I got my commercial driver's license at the age of 18. I still have those commercial driver's licenses in my back pocket. And you know, I truly believe that the trucking industry is the most taxed and regulated industry in this country. For far too long, we have been the recipient of overreaching, overburdensome, and out-of-control federal agencies.
The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association also opposes any attempts to increase the minimum insurance. Opponents point out that most motor carriers already carry $1 million in insurance, and that the most recent study into the issue found that the current minimum insurance level adequately covers damages in all but 0.6% of cases. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration is ready to renew a trucking company's hours of service exemption for a route that spans less than 300 feet. The packaging company WestRock is being granted an hours of service exemption for certain short-haul drivers at a paper mill in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Since the shipping and receiving departments are located on opposite sides of the mill, truck drivers are required to travel on a public road to transport trailers. That happens an average of 40 times a day. And while the drive is just about 275 feet, it's considered interstate travel due to the fact that the cargo being transported is either going to or coming from other states. WestRock has been operating under the same exemption for more than a decade now. FMCSA has determined that extending the waiver would not compromise safety, but the public will have a total of 30 days to comment. If the exemption goes through after the agency reviews all the comments, it will be good for another 5 years. Too Simple, the troubled autonomous trucking startup, has run into another roadblock. The company says it's voluntarily delisting from the NASDAQ and going private. The announcement came via a filing with the Security and Exchange Commission. Too Simple's stock price has cratered in recent months. It fell below $1 a share in November and was as low as 36 cents earlier this month. Too Simple was the first autonomous trucking company out of the gate, but has faced a number of setbacks in recent years. The company is ending operations in the U.S. and has laid off most of its workforce, shifting its focus to China and Japan. Too Simple stock is slated to leave the NASDAQ on February 7th. Tesla vehicles have been met with another challenge they can't seem to overcome: winter weather. More specifically, extreme cold temperatures in Chicago. Fox 32 reports on problems at charging stations throughout the Windy City. Tesla owners told the station they've been waiting for hours to charge up their vehicles. In some cases, they never did and had to be towed. The Tesla website does note that cold temperatures can cause an increased drain on batteries. This, of course, is a concern as the idea of electrifying commercial fleets is pursued, since commercial trucks obviously operate in cold weather environments as well. Charging is a concern, so too is range. The AAA Automotive Research Center in Southern California recently found that the range of an electric vehicle dropped 57% when the temperature was held steady at 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Bitterly cold temperatures in Wisconsin have triggered the state's frozen road law. The Wisconsin DOT putting the law into effect on Thursday for the northern half of the state. The frozen road law allows vehicles hauling abrasives or salt for highway winter maintenance and certain forest products to carry more weight. Zones 1 and 2 are the first two areas to be affected. That includes US 10 near Stevens Point, along with numbered state and federal highways north of US 10. The higher weight limits do not apply to county or local roads. A U.S. bankruptcy court has approved the sale of nearly 24 properties previously leased by Yellow. The green light was given after no objections were made to a December auction of the 23 service centers and terminals. All told, the properties went for $83 million. Estes Express Lines was a leading bidder, shelling out more than $35 million for 5 properties. This was the second round of terminal sales. The first included 130 terminals, which were auctioned off for close to $2 billion. Estes was a big buyer in that round as well, pulling in 24 properties for nearly $250 million. We're not done, though. Yellow's fleet of 12,000 tractors and 35,000 trailers is currently being sold off. That process continues. When British Columbia promised to crack down on motor carriers involved in crashes involving infrastructure, they weren't kidding. The province has suspended the safety certificate of a third carrier, the third in as many weeks. The most recent suspension came as a result of an incident on January 15th, in which a tractor-trailer carrying an oversized load struck a sign hanging from the Gilmore Overpass on Highway 1 near Burnaby. The province's transportation ministry said there was no visible damage to the bridge and the sign attached to the overpass sustained minor damage, but the ministry suspended the carrier's safety certificate anyway. The carrier, International Machine Transport, operates on both sides of the U.S.-Canada border, but only the company's 20-truck British Columbia fleet will be impacted by the suspension. The company has not responded to Landline's request for comment. In December, the province announced a plan designed to mitigate future wrecks by increasing fines and penalties for carriers involved in infrastructure crashes, and they are clearly following through. And finally, transportation officials in Canada say they're meeting the demand for truck drivers applying for the Free and Secure Trade, or FAST program, designed for low-risk shipments entering the U.S. from Canada and Mexico. Transport Canada says they and U.S. Customs officials have prioritized FAST applicants. There is currently no processing wait time for candidates who apply, and all applications are being processed well within the 30-day service standard. Expanded hours of operation, 2 new enrollment centers, enrollment blitzes, and split interview options are being credited with unclogging the system. Transport Canada says most enrollment centers are now able to offer fast interviews within a week of booking. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Next, I'll cover federal meetings on technology and lease purchase plans with OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs Jay Grimes, and Ashley Blackford talks with 2 younger OOIDA board members. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline now. Welcome back. The term advisory committee doesn't likely sound very exciting, but the topics they tackle and the effect they can have on future regulation are likely something of great interest. Welcome back to Landline Now. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Regulatory Roundup. I'm joined, as always, by OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. Jay, thanks for joining me.
Good to be back.
First up, and this is a meeting that is actually happening today, is the Advisory Committee on Transforming Transportation, which is kind of a broad term. But, Jay, I'm wondering if you could narrow it down for us a bit and tell us, what is this committee's mission?
Yeah, and this is a newly formed advisory committee being sponsored by the Department of Transportation, broadly established to provide advice and recommendations to the DOT Secretary about needs, objectives, plans, and approaches for transportation innovation. And they're going to be working on a few different items: pathways to safe, secure, equitable and environmentally friendly and accessible deployments of emerging technologies, policies that encourage innovation to grow and support a safe and productive U.S. workforce, as well as foster an economic competitiveness and job quality, ways that DOT can identify and elevate cybersecurity solutions and protect privacy, as well as a couple other tasks that they're going to be working on. I think overall, really looking across the spectrum of transportation about current technologies that might need to be promoted more that are working, and then other innovations that maybe down the road, if addressed properly, can really have some safety benefits on down the line, and really kind of just open up discussion from across a number of different sectors about kind of what the future of transportation may be in terms of technology. So sort of some interesting discussion that's going to be taking place and really kicking off the advisory committee today with their first official meeting in Washington.
Todd Spencer, in comments that were sent to the Department of Transportation, expressed an overall concern with the mission of this committee and what OOIDA thinks that they need to do. Can you kind of relay to folks what he said?
Yes. Whenever we talk about emerging technologies, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. And certainly we've seen some technologies work and improve safety, some others that really haven't had the intended impacts that a lot of these technologies developers, manufacturers, and the companies that can afford them would like to see achieved. And we kind of sent some comments ahead of the committee's work, kind of outlining some principles that we hope they should follow. And certainly, we're supportive of some of the advisory committees to promote workforce, protect cybersecurity and privacy, but we also caution against rushing to mandate technologies, especially unproven and unreliable technologies or innovations that, again, will not accomplish their intended safety objectives. And we kind of pointed out the example of the electronic logging device mandate that went into effect in December of 2017. There was never any significant or sufficient research indicating that ELDs would lead to a decrease in crashes. And to this day, DOT still lacks data demonstrating any positive safety results from the ELD mandate. Yet we've seen costs go up. We've seen drivers who don't want ELDs leave the industry. And oftentimes these are drivers with years, decades of crash-free driving history. So certainly a lot of problems when it comes to unproven technology. And unless it's really comprehensively tested and you kind of see the benefits, it kind of raises some questions on if it should be mandated. We also pointed out some kind of examples that we know DOT is considering right now, whether that's autonomous vehicles, speed limiters, automatic emergency braking systems, and then this kind of long-standing program that DOT is still in the process of developing, FMCSA specifically, of beyond compliance, really rewarding carriers and their safety scores simply for adopting safety technologies, not showing if the safety technologies work just by putting them on their truck, even if it doesn't lead to improved safety performance. And we certainly have opposed that kind of notion of thinking since that kind of first came about back in 2015.
So let's dig in a little bit on some of these points. On the DOT website, and you mentioned this earlier, it says they'll consider, and quoting here, integrated approaches and finding ways to promote greater cross-modal integration of emerging technologies, in particular applications to deploy automation. Obviously, autonomous vehicles being what they're referring to there. It seems as if the government's pushing this forward despite any concerns. So I'm wondering if you can kind of list for folks, what are some of the concerns specifically with autonomous vehicles and automated technology?
Yeah, we hear all the time, all too often from these technology companies that are working on the technology, that are testing and deploying it, that, crashes on the highways it's like 94% due to human error. That statistic has been proven to be incorrect and certainly a lot of exaggeration there. And they claim that, autonomous vehicles are going to lead to zero deaths. But in the last few years, where we see more and more of these vehicles being deployed and out on the road, we continue to see them wind up in crashes, wind up in fatalities. And for truckers that have to share the road with these vehicles, it can create quite a bit of worry, especially we know that these autonomous vehicles aren't going through kind of the same oversight and regulatory processes that commercial motor vehicles have to pass. And our perspective is that there's been a whole lot of voluntary safety reporting for these vehicles that really leaves not only truckers in the dark about if they're working, but the general public as well. And we kind of see that in some of these research studies that say, there's a lot of skepticism about whether autonomous vehicles are working, simply because we don't have the information. And we've kind of pushed DOT, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, who's really kind of leading the charge in autonomous vehicle oversight, to establish mandatory safety reporting standards that are based on documented research and data. And we've supported mandatory testing, safety reporting requirements that would hopefully provide not only professional drivers, but also the general public with direct and accessible information about how these autonomous vehicles are actually performing.
Another couple of areas of technology that the DOT has seemed particularly interested in: speed limiters and automatic emergency braking systems. And Jay, you and I have talked quite a bit about these two issues, but just briefly, I'm wondering if you can go over what some of the big concerns are with those two technologies.
Yeah, again, speed limiters, I think, is an example of maybe a quote-unquote easy fix to some of the highway safety problems we see, much like ELDs were touted to be kind of a silver bullet solution. And you can simply turn on a speed limiter, and that's going to decrease crashes throughout the country. Based on the research that we've seen, based on the experience that drivers and carriers have with speed limiters, that has been proven not to be the case. Certainly, the speed differentials that are going to be created between speed-limited trucks and other vehicles who are going as much as 15, 20 miles an hour, just if they're going the speed limit, is going to create more interactions between trucks and cars. That's going to lead to more crashes. Some other operational concerns as well. When you talk about AEBs, again, an example of some promising technology that, can be some benefits there, but we're not quite to the point where it's 100% reliable. And, we've heard stories and reports of false activations related to automatic emergency braking systems, especially on commercial trucks, where again, taking control out of the driver's hands can lead to some, dangerous scenarios. So, and this is a case where on speed limiters, DOT, FMCSA, they're not mandated to pursue a rulemaking on AEBs. Congress has directed them to undergo a rulemaking process. They're kind of going through that regulatory process right now. We thought the proposal kind of fell short to ensuring that these false activations would not occur if and when 5 years down the line that these AEB systems are mandated on newly manufactured trucks. So I want to see a final rule that can ensure a little more comprehensive oversight. And again, it's all about reliability and making sure these technology systems work the way they're supposed to, when they're supposed to.
Just one more thing I wanted to ask you about regarding this, and that's the Beyond Compliance program at FMCSA. Yep. And I think it's worth reminding people what that is and what some of the big issues are with that, specifically from the small business trucking perspective. Yeah, so this is a program that FMCSA has put out some proposals on, still haven't finalized anything, to identify and reviewing advanced safety equipment, enhanced driver fitness measures, fleet safety management tools, technologies, and other standards for use by motor carriers to allow them to receive recognition, which by all accounts seems like an improved credit in terms of their safety measurement system percentile ranking. So basically giving larger carriers a leg up on their safety score just because they have the resources and capital to spend on technology systems. Again, no system in place to ensure that their actual safety performance is improving. It's only the adoption of these technologies. And we've always said that Beyond Compliance must actually measure and reward crash reduction or continued exemplary safety performance, especially for carriers that don't have reportable DOT crashes on their record. So we've long advocated that Beyond Compliance should reward all carriers for continued safety performance, improving their safety performance, but not just the larger carriers that can afford to spend money on these technologies. So shouldn't be just limited to technologies, shouldn't reward carriers for adopting technologies, but to actually improve safety is what we want to see from Beyond Compliance. We have just a little bit of time left, Jay, here, and there was another meeting happening today that I think is worth mentioning at least, and that's the Truck Leasing Task Force. This is their third meeting. What is the topic that they're tackling this time around? Yeah, today's meeting is really focusing on looking at truck leasing agreements and how they're able to account for maintenance of the vehicle. And as you mentioned, this is the third meeting of the committee. The task force was created to prevent predatory lease purchase agreements. These are predatory leasing schemes where we see carriers and other leasing entities take advantage of individuals' kind of hope to eventually own their own truck. And we've seen far too many circumstances where individuals get taken advantage of through these fine print. There's no way they can ever live up to the agreements to own their own truck. And heard some discussion today that kind of the nature of these agreements simply doesn't allow the proper wages or proper payment for the drivers who are engaged in the lease to really spend the necessary capital on maintenance. So a lot of times they have to overlook maintenance because they don't have the money to make their truck leasing payments. So that was the discussion today, really focusing on how inequitable lease purchase agreements affect how the vehicle is maintained. Again, that's not going to end up in a positive way for safety there. Okay, well, Jay, we've run out of time, but thank you very much for all the information. Okay, thank you. I've been talking with Jay Grimes of OOIDA. Landline Now will be back in a moment.
Attention professional drivers, are you behind on your tax filings? You owe money? Integrity Tax Relief Group frees drivers from IRS trouble. You watch the road, we'll keep an eye on the IRS. Call now, 855-976-4291.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a CAT scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forget misaccuracy when you're truck on a CAT scale.
Welcome back. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association board is made up of more than 24 members. All bring a different perspective to the table, especially 2 of the younger alternate board members. Matt Bradley has been trucking for a little over a decade. He joins me now. Matt, what made you want to become a member of OOIDA?
Even before I became a trucker, I was always interested in politics, and so I love the mission of OOIDA and how they would go and stand on behalf of truckers everywhere and represent truckers.
And you became a member. How long after that did you start to take interest in becoming a board member?
Ever since I had joined. Even kind of before I joined, I kind of wanted it to be a goal of mine was to get on the board to, add a different perspective and view. So it's kind of a long-term thing or a personal goal of mine.
And talk to me about the importance of, having yourself on the board to add that different perspective.
I would say it's very important to be on the board because of my generation. I'm a millennial, so I can kind of reach back to, different generations, reach forward to newer generations and kind of pick ideas and issues and how to communicate with the newer generation of truckers. And then, growing up, I was called an old soul because I would always listen to the older folks. So I like to listen to the older truckers because you can gain so much wisdom from that. So I think bringing all those perspectives to the board helps a lot. So you can kind of reach back, say, okay, hey, this is what's going on the ground, and then go back, take it to the board and talk to the older members and say, hey, this is what some of the younger drivers are saying or dealing with.
Now, becoming a member of OOIDA, of course, a big part of the association's job is advocacy. How important is it for you to be politically active?
It's very important to me because it's a part of the civic process. I'm getting numerous calls right now personally, to get back on the school board. So at home, so being very politically involved, whether it's just, researching candidates, researching issues, going to your local council meetings, it impacts everything. And a lot of drivers don't know that being politically involved, even if it's just a little bit, impacts trucking as well, whether it's just writing a letter to a congressperson, finding out who your local council member is when you're trying to park at home.
Do you find it's more the older generation that are more politically involved, or do you see people like yourself that are taking an interest, that are, contacting lawmakers and kind of putting their 2 cents into things, kind of in hopes for some change?
I kind of want to say I see more of the older people doing it, which is not a bad thing, but the older people, are doing it because they kind of know the process of how to do everything, whereas with the newer generation, it's an issue of, okay, I'm just out here driving to, make money. And what does politics have to do with me? It's too messy. It's too much this, too much that. But, with the younger generation, I'm like, hey, trucking, there's a lot to do with politics and trucking as well.
What is your advice for younger truck drivers to encourage them to become more politically active?
My advice is to, learn the major issues. It doesn't have to be anything major at the moment, but just kind of go into it slowly. Start finding out what's going on locally, what's going on statewide. And my advice is, regardless of your political view, you can always reach out to a lawmaker, no matter what side of the aisle they're on, because they represent your interests as well, not just one side. And then having that conversation and reaching out or, networking with someone who's politically active. So that would be my advice. Network, start reaching out, start researching.
And what's your advice for drivers, young and old, to not get frustrated, especially with how slow things can move in D.C.?
My advice, and I've always heard it as well, being on both sides of the political thing, is that change happens slowly. It's a marathon and not a sprint. So, you may not see anything happen just yet. Just know that it's going through the necessary steps. So remember, marathon, not a sprint. And then sometimes it may be a lame duck session where it's almost an election year. Things won't happen right there and there unless it's very urgent. So just stay encouraged while you're waiting. It's happening. We're working on it. We hear you.
How do you stay informed on big issues? Do you depend on social media, or how do you do that?
I depend on social media, talking to other drivers, landline, of course, landline, when it comes up on Twitter or when the magazine comes to the house, emails from the board. I have so many newspaper subscriptions, so something may come up. I may have an email link to different committees that are in Congress and to the main DOT email. So that's how I stay, on top of everything.
And lastly, what would you say? You kind of touched on a few things, but what would you say to younger drivers who are out there, not really having a ton of interest in the political arena or what's going on? What encouragement would you have for them?
Get into the fight. Don't, just come out here and, get out here, establish a career, and then complain about what's going on. Start researching candidates. Start researching your different politicians. Start researching who is on what committee. Start reaching out to OOIDA. Jump on social media and kind of find groups or get educated on the topic because politically speaking, like I said before, everything impacts trucking.
That was Matt Bradley talking about the importance of being politically active in the trucking industry. Harry Smith joins me now. He is a fifth-generation trucker who serves as an alternate OOIDA board member. Harry, what made you want to be on the board?
A great opportunity to give back to the industry I love and to represent a segment of the industry that I don't think OOIDA captures, but it's not OOIDA's fault. It's because people say, well, I'm going to get out of over-the-road trucking, and then they go into the scope where I work, and I want to be that bridge between the local guys, if you will, and then our over-the-road truckers that run, thousands of miles a week.
Now, being a member of OOIDA, a big part of the association's job is advocacy. How important is it to you to be politically active?
100%. That's the sole purpose for OOIDA's existence, is to help steer and hopefully stop bad regulations and steer our politicians that are hell-bent on adding something to our regulatory obligations and steering it to something that's not as bad as it could be. Because as our Louis Pugh says, if you're not at the table, you're on the table. Mm-hmm. And that's 100% true.
What would you say your advice is for younger truck drivers getting into the industry when it comes to being politically active?
Boy, it's so tough to dedicate time to paying attention to what they're doing, but understanding which politicians vote which way is so important, and understanding that sometimes there's Democrat politicians that align with, our typical Republican guys. And those are the people we really want to pay attention to and try and help push on to, more of the thought strategy that helps truckers. So paying attention to who your state representatives are is imperative, and then is okay, but your federal, my Mitt Romney and Mike Lee, those are the guys that you really got to pay attention to and see what they're doing and try and get involved with what they have going on, even if it's just commenting on their Twitter or their Instagram. I mean, for young people, that's how you're either their biggest cheerleader or their biggest guy saying, we don't want to vote for this guy because he thinks that we should have speed limiters.
How do you stay informed on the big issues? Do you depend on social media or other outlets?
Yeah, I'm a total social media guy. I pretty much use X exclusively for political stuff. Then I have Instagram for fun, family, work life. I do follow some of the political leaders that I really like on Instagram. They're to see their personal life, but as far as where I want to see an update on the parking bill and speed limiters, I'm getting that flow of info from X along with the OOIDA emails.
Now, OOIDA is always encouraging members to contact lawmakers about different issues. Do you find it's intimidating to do that? Have you ever done that? Have you ever used the Fighting for Truckers?
It does seem totally, maybe not scary, but like you feel like it's totally pointless. As 1 in 3.5 million people in Utah, you might feel totally useless when you call your senator and leave a voicemail or email them. But the impact it has is definitely felt and seen. So it seems like you're just swimming upstream, but when you do submit a inquiry to your elected leaders, those matter. Even if it's just your one single voice, it matters. They have a team of, people don't understand that they have a team of assistants gathering this data and saying, hey, we got 80% of the people that just mailed in, and they said do this on this political item. So they pay attention to that because they want to get reelected. And as a young voter, you don't understand the impact that you can have in, talking to or writing to your elected leaders. And the best way I found to do that is as I follow along with OOIDA, and I have some other shared access land alliances that I pay real close attention to, and even regarding filling Lake Powell, if you will. But you get behind a cheerleader for one of those campaigns, and they can set up an email platform that links you directly to your elected leader, and then you can write an email in just a few sentences and hit send. And it seems it's very easy. You can do it with your phone right at your fingertips just while you're having lunch. And again, that impact is definitely felt by those elected leaders when you pile up an inbox full of emails championing a cause. I think that's the best way to try and push our elected leaders into fighting for truckers.
And lastly, how do you feel like your dad has encouraged you when it comes to kind of being politically in the know and keeping up on issues and taking an interest in things?
Oh, he's a great leader in that way. He is not afraid of any politician. He knows that that politician puts their pants on the same way he puts his pants on. They're just a human. They're not special by any means. They're definitely no more valuable to our society than he is. And he treats them with the same respect he would like to be treated with, but they're his level opponent, if you will, or his level partner. And that's a great example to show is you don't need to be afraid. You just be yourself, have that mutual respect. And then that helps get break the ice, if you will, or it just helps you have some confidence. So that's the biggest takeaway. Don't be scared. Because I think a lot of people are scared. I mean, politicians have power, and I'm just one little guy. How could me dissenting against this politician's last move that hurt my trucking industry? How can my one little dissent make a difference? So it's easy to feel small, but the message is you're not small. You're never small.
That was Harry Smith talking about his experience on the OOIDA board and how he stays up to date on political issues that impact trucking. For more information on how you can take action and contact lawmakers, you can visit fightingfortruckers.com. There, you'll find a list of current issues, information on your lawmaker, and how to contact them to make sure your voice is heard. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
Stock up on Howe's Diesel Treat, the nation's most trusted anti-gel. And to be safe from the harshest winter conditions, make sure you have Howe's Diesel Lifeline on hand, the fastest-acting gelling rescue product. Available nationwide, Howe's products are designed to keep you rolling through the toughest conditions. Visit Howe'sProducts.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Welcome back to Landline Now. Our time today is short, but we've always got time for our next guest who brings us updates on non-consensual towing, legislation in the Show Me State, and possible speed limit changes in the Hoosier State. Keith Goebel is a state legislative editor for Landline Magazine, and he joins us here in Studio A now. Keith, what's going on?
Oh, there's a good amount of stuff going on if you're really interested in state legislative content. So you kind of get to pick and choose, especially this time of the year with what we're talking about. But hopefully we have some, as you mentioned, some topics. Hopefully folks will find of interest.
Some blockbuster topics that will knock people's socks off. That's what I heard right there.
Potentially.
We're going to start with a story that might feel a bit like Groundhog Day for those who have been following this issue. But it's back. There's a renewed effort in Missouri to provide truck drivers better protections when it comes to non-consensual tows, TOWS, not TOES. What's behind this new effort, Keith?
Yeah, I sense a theme. We're talking about a groundhog effect, starting with Missouri here. Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll continue into Indiana, and we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, in Missouri here for at least a handful of years, I would say, pursuits at the statehouse to address those non-consensual tows, as you're pointing out. I know as it is now in Missouri law. Does not allow for trucking operators who believe that they were overcharged. Does not allow for them, if they were overcharged for non-consensual tow, does not allow for them to file a complaint. So, yet again, this year, one of the first bills introduced in the Missouri House for the new year addresses this issue, trying to provide greater protection and recourse for those folks whose goods are impounded with a vehicle and they have no way of accessing them. So trying to help those folks out.
Yeah, and the bill is pretty simple in how you described it there. The rub in Missouri, and again, going back to Groundhog Day, we've seen this story or movie or show or whatever you want to call it before, because there has been legislation that has gone through Jefferson City that has landed on the governor's desk, and at least once, maybe more than once, and you'll correct me here if I'm wrong, Keith, but Governor Mike Parson has vetoed that legislation. So any effort here, any attempt, it really does kind of face an uphill battle when you take that into account, right?
Oh, certainly, yeah. Twice. 2019 was the first one that I can recall. 2021 was the second. The versions of the legislation covering these non-consensual tows varied a bit. In 2021, the follow-up from 2 years prior, there was an effort to revise the legislation to make it more palatable for the governor, but to no avail. Governor Parson, had stated that he felt that in his veto message that his state law already addresses the concerns that were brought up and with this legislation, and there was also a point being made by the governors that there could be some legal issues with how it was previously set up. The legislation previously would have allowed a legislative panel to regulate towing rates. That panel would also be able to investigate towing complaints and establish for law enforcement a towing rotation, again for large vehicles. And the governor felt that was legally problematic and wasn't sure how it would function as part of his reasoning for vetoing. So, going back to the drawing board of sorts for this legislative effort, a year ago, bill was introduced in the House. The same Representative Griffith who's brought it up this year, Dave Griffith out of Jefferson City area. He had kind of the same bill a year ago. A year ago, the House approved it almost unanimously. Went to the Senate, did not get consideration in the Senate Transportation Committee. So, it's back to I say essentially square one as we go back to for the start of 2024. So hopeful that maybe there will be a breakthrough this year. Maybe there's been talking behind the scenes that will help get this through. But yeah, definitely something that truck drivers, I know the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association as well as the Missouri Trucking Association, both advocating for this legislation. What happens over the course of the next few months, I guess we will see if that has been, they have been making any headway in getting lawmakers to, again, send this to the governor.
Let's head east on I-70 now and venture on into Indiana here for more Groundhog Day coverage, I suppose. Quite a few people there in Indiana hoping to make changes to the state's speed limit rules. And as people may already know, there is a speed differential in the state for cars and trucks on rural roadways, I believe. And here, once again, we're seeing a renewed effort to change that as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to recall for over the past 20 plus years, states, there's definitely been the trend to either eliminate speed differentials or reduce them. And I want to say, once upon a time, Indiana had a 10-mile-per-hour differential and reduced it to 5. And then when cars were allowed to go 5 miles per hour faster, which right now they can go 70. When they bumped them up from 65 to 70, they also bumped up the speed for trucks. So it's just a 5 mile per hour differential. The problem has been completely eliminating that differential. This was House version, Representative Mike Ellsworth there in Indiana. This is at least the 6th time as we get into 2024 that he's introduced a bill that would eliminate the differential. Although there is some really good research that's been made available by reliable folks there in the state. You talk about the Indiana Department of Transportation. They had a joint research study with Purdue University, which Purdue is a notable university if you're, especially there in Indiana. Research that suggested that whenever you've got uniform 70 mile per hour speeds, that the frequency of crashes there, specifically in Indiana, would be reduced by about 20%. But that hasn't been enough to even come up for consideration in the Senate. And they've been able to get it out of the House before, but the holdup has been in the Senate.
It's the chair of the committee, I believe.
I have that backwards.
Right?
I have this backwards. It has actually been approved previously in the Senate. The holdup has been in the House. The holdup has been in the House Transportation Committee.
Right.
Which is where this latest attempt is going to be starting out with. So, yeah, we will see, like we were talking about with Missouri on the towing issue, we will see how, if there has been any change in the thought process for lawmakers there in Indiana. But of course, you kind of go back to, well, so what's the deal? Well, why does this keep getting brought up?
Yeah.
The Indiana Motor Truck Association has played a huge part in that, which might not be a surprise for folks. But, that appears to really be the biggest hang-up.
Well, and we spoke with Representative Aylesworth, I can't remember when it was a little while ago, and he, I think, specifically mentioned at the time that the chair of that particular committee in the House just wants no part of this, essentially. And I think it is because, as you mentioned there, the Indiana Motor Truck Association wants no part of this. So that's kind of a non-starter there. Representative Ellsworth keeps trying. We'll see if this is, I think you said the 6th time. We'll see if that one's a charm.
Yeah, at least the 6th. Obviously, over the course of the past decade or so, there have been even more attempts than that. But this particular lawmaker, I really appreciate his determination. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see if this year is any different.
And you'll keep us updated. Another bill in Indiana, too, would raise the limit for passenger vehicles to 75, which would even
widen the differential,
the gap even more.
Instead of eliminating, yes.
We'll keep an eye on all this, or Keith, you will, and you'll keep us updated. We appreciate it as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You can check out Keith's work at landline.media and in every issue of Landline Magazine. That's our show for today. We appreciate you tuning in and hope to see you again soon.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
My kids.
chrome,
And I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us.
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.